Now, Sports Central, we're going over our next final prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be over the UCLA Bruins. And this is a team that was 4-8 last season, ended up having a bit of a down season comparison to how UCLA has been in the past. But whether or not this team will improve on that and why I think UCLA could be a bowl contender next season is what we're going over here today. We're also going to be going over your returning production along with a full prediction and preview on every game on the Bruins schedule heading into the 2020 season. So anyway, with that, let's look at your season trends from last year. Of course, they were 4-8 overall. They missed a bowl game by a couple of the games, but they were able to get 4 pretty decent wins. They did have a couple of good ones on there for sure, as we will get to in a couple minutes here. But as far as the season trends look, of course, they were 3-5 between September and October, which really, I mean, this team did struggle quite a bit right off the bat, but they still were able to get a win over Washington State in the third week, 67-63. That was also a road win, and they also managed to get a couple of good wins as you look towards late October, early November. But in the end, they were 3-5 between September and October, and then 1-3 between November and the postseason. So this team did improve quite a bit over the season, even though they only were able to get up 4 wins last season. They did end up beating Washington State, though, once again, 67-63. Also had a win over Arizona State. That was definitely their key win last season, 42-32. And considering Arizona State last season was ranked for a good chunk of the year, and they also were able to knock off Oregon at the end of the season, I would say Arizona State was easily one of the best teams in the Pac-12 last season. And so for UCLA, that was definitely a really good win there for them to be able to knock off Arizona State in the way that they did. They also knocked off Colorado 31-14. That was also a good win there, considering they really had no troubles with Colorado there in that game. And it looked like UCLA could have made a run for a bowl game there after those 2 games. I mean, those 2 were in back-to-back games, and UCLA was looking very good heading into their November. But still, this team was still a couple of games out, which really, quite honestly, for UCLA, they just didn't really have the talent there to be able to make a bowl game last season. But I think definitely going into next season, there is a chance UCLA does have a better chance to make a run at a good bowl bid. As far as the returning production looks, of course, your returning quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and last season he put up 2,700 yards with 21 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. Also had a 59.7% completion rate. So really, I mean, his big problem last season was his accuracy rate. Of course, once again, having a 59% completion rate, nearly 60, that isn't all that great. I mean, out of most college quarterbacks, like the best ones, usually have right around a 70 to a 75% completion rate. And for DTR, who only had a 59%, that definitely was detrimental to this Bruins team last season. But he was able to put up a decent touchdown to interception ratio, as he did have 21 touchdowns and 12 interceptions last season. As far as the running back core looks, you do lose your top running back in Joshua Kelly, and that's going to be a tough loss there, as he had just over 1,100 yards with 13 touchdowns. And so, yeah, Joshua Kelly, them losing him is going to be a tough loss there. However, they do have Demetric Felton. He was basically their second running back last season, but he also was their second receiver, as he was able to put up 925 total yards with 5 touchdowns, with 330 of those being rushing yards. So he did play running back for a good chunk of last season. However, he was more of a receiver than a running back. So it's going to be tough to say who's going to take over for that running back core next season. I would assume Demetric Felton will probably go in there and take a majority of the time to be a running back. But once again, it's just tough to say right now, as we are still a good month and a half out from the season if everything goes as scheduled. But as far as the receiving core looks, you do return your top receiver in Kyle Phillips, and that's going to be a huge return for this team, as he put up 680 yards last season with 5 touchdowns. And they also return their third receiver, or actually no, they do lose their second receiver and their tight end in Devin Cece. And last season, he was able to put up a decent amount of yardage, 640 yards with 4 touchdowns. And so I would say that's another really tough loss that this team is going to have to deal with next season, along with Joshua Kelly. They do return their third receiver and their second running back, of course, in Demetric Felton. We already went over him, and I definitely think he's going to have a big impact on this offense next season. They also return their receivers in Jalen Irwin and also Chase Cota. And last season, they put up nearly the same amount of yards, 350 yards each. And then we also saw Chase Cota have 3 touchdowns, and then Jalen Irwin had 2. So in the end, I mean, this offense in general really is not looking all that bad. With DTR at quarterback, he definitely needs to improve, but he's got a lot of room for improvement. I definitely think he will. But the running back core, there are a couple uncertainties there. But as far as the receiving core looks, I think it looks great for UCLA next season. So this should be a pretty good receiving core, I would say, even though they're losing their tight end. But in the end, I mean, yeah, UCLA is still looking like a pretty good team next season. They do lose one on the offensive line, which really is not all that terrible at all, considering most teams lose 2 to 3 on their offensive lines. And they also lose one defensive lineman, one linebacker, and 2 in the secondary. So this defense does lose 4 overall, which really is not all that terrible. I mean, most defenses lose 4 to even 5 on average. So for UCLA, it's looking pretty good for the next season. I would say there's a moderate amount of losses, but still, I mean, it's not all that terrible. I think UCLA definitely has a chance to make a run at a bowl game, but still, it's really tough to say even how the bowl threshold is going to be configured next season, considering how some teams are having to cancel their non-conference games. And yeah, so there's a lot of uncertainty there as well, but I'm guessing they'll probably have to adjust it for the Big Ten and the Pac-12 in order for them to be able to have a chance to make it to a bowl game. But once again, lots of uncertainty right now. But it brings up the question, chances of a bowl game in 2020. I would say in a normal season, if the chances for UCLA are the same as teams in the SEC or the ACC, I would say for UCLA, their chances are actually pretty good. With DTR at quarterback, if he's able to improve a lot, put up 3,000 yards, I would say. If he's also able to improve his completion rate, I think this UCLA team in general definitely has a good chance to make a run at a bowl game next season. But that also depends on the running back core. If the running back situation is kind of down, I would say for UCLA next season, it's going to be tougher for them to make it to a bowl game. No doubt on that. But in the end, still for UCLA, it looks pretty good for 2020. I think this team definitely has the potential to put up a pretty good season, no doubt, and be one of the better teams in their division in the Pac-12 as well. As far as your schedule looks, of course, you've had 3 games canceled already. You do not have to play against New Mexico State, Hawaii, or San Diego State anymore. So basically, your season is already scheduled to start on September 26th when you have Stanford at home. So, I mean, it's a really weird schedule for this UCLA team now, considering the Pac-12 has canceled all of their non-conference games. But as far as the Stanford game goes, I mean, Stanford next season, I don't really expect a whole lot out of them, so that should be an easier game to start off the season. You also have Arizona the following week on October 3rd, which really should not be all that difficult either. But you do have road trips to Arizona State and Colorado then between October 10th and the 17th. And then you finish off October with a game against Utah. In your November, you've got Oregon State, Washington State, USC, and California in that order. So in the end, really the schedule is not all that difficult. I mean, you don't have to play Oregon, so that's definitely a big positive for this UCLA team next season. But that honestly, that Pac-12 South is looking pretty difficult. You got USC in there. You also have to play Utah. You got to play several pretty tough teams. So in the end for UCLA, I mean, it could be a tough schedule, but I do think in the end, I mean, it really definitely sets up for them to be able to make it to a bowl game. But as far as the first 3 games go for UCLA next season, I do think they start off 2-0. I think you get 2 easy wins over Stanford and Arizona, especially with those games being at home. I think that's going to help UCLA a lot. But in the end, I do think you take your first loss of the season to Arizona State in Arizona. Of course, they have to play that game on the road, and that's going to be a good team next season with Herm Edwards, and their quarterback, Jaden Daniels, is looking very good going into next season. So I think that team does end up getting the win there. But as far as your next 3 games go, I think that you do lose 2 of them. I think you beat off Colorado on the road in Boulder. However, I do think you do take losses against Utah and Oregon State. And I went back and forth on that Oregon State game quite a bit. But I think in the end, UCLA is just going to be too tough coming off of a tough game against Utah. And I do think they do take a loss there. So you head into your November with a 3-3 record, which really is not terrible. I mean, considering their schedule is pretty tough. But in the end, I do think in your last 3 games, you do get 1 win. You will beat off Washington State. However, you will take losses against USC and California. And I also went back and forth on the USC game. I think that game is certainly going to be a very close one. I think UCLA has got a good chance to put up a big upset there against USC in that November 21st game, especially coming off of that Washington State game, which should be a big win for UCLA. But in the end, I think that USC will end up getting the win. It's going to be very close. There's no doubt on that, but USC will get the win in the end. And I also went back and forth on that California game, but California next season, watch out for them. I mean, you heard it here first. I think California next season has the potential. I mean, if there was still a regular schedule for California, and if they were still playing 12 games next season, I could easily see California getting up to 10 wins. I mean, especially if that team can stay healthy, if their quarterback Chase Garbers can put up a big season like he's expected to, I think that team is definitely one to watch out for as well. But in the end, for UCLA, your record prediction will be 4-5 for next season. Really not all that terrible. I mean, 4 pretty good wins on a tough schedule, I wouldn't say is terrible for next season. And also, I mean, if you also got to consider your 3 non-conference games between New Mexico State, Hawaii, and San Diego State. I think UCLA definitely has the chance, or would have had the chance, to win at least 2 of those games. So in a normal season where the bowl threshold will be 6 games, I think UCLA would make it next season if that was the case. But in the end, I think you do go 4-5. But anyway, let me know your thoughts and comments below on UCLA. If you disagree with anything here, I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments below. But in the end, thanks again for watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. If you enjoyed this preview, be sure to slap a like on it and subscribe as well. It really helps out the channel. I'd really appreciate that. But as always, thanks again for watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central, and I will see you all later.